For 2 minutes, I would like to recap something, what we spoke about last week. Last week we spoke about the fact that even though there are Taryag mitzvahs, and Taryag mitzvahs means that there's 316 commandments, and as far as the tzivui is concerned, as far as the schar for listening to the tzivui of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they all have the same. Not one tzivui is more than another tzivui. In the tzivuim, they're all the same. But there's another, I'd call it another facet to the Taryag mitzvahs. And the other facet to the Taryag mitzvahs is the Ramchal calls it Chelkei Ho'avoida. Now, that's really based on the Kabbalistic outlook on the whole purpose of creation and man's part in creation, which means, to give a recap in 2 minutes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us in order that we could better ourselves so that we would be able to become Dovuk and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That means the ultimate toiva, the ultimate blessing which HaKadosh Baruch Hu could give to us is the ability to be Dovuk in Him. And therefore, Begadol, as they say in Ivrit, if we look at it as the general picture, our focus of Asiyas HaMitzvahs is because all these mitzvahs come together to create a perfect human being who, let's call it for lack of better words, who's bettered himself, who's been masakin himself so that he can be able to be dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, in honest truth, the avoider, so we're going to call that from now on the avoider of the Adam. That means there's the tzivuyim, Taryag tzivuyim, and there's the avoider. The Baal Shem Tov called it that the Taryag mitzvahs are 316 eitzes. The 316 eitzes through which he makes himself row to be dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The makor for this is the Arizal in the beginning of the Sefer Eitz Chaim. Okay, so now, even though when we look at the Taryag mitzvahs, they are equal to each other in as far as the tzivuyim is concerned, but when you come to avoida, that means, let's call it the chelik of tikkun, the chelik that the mitzvahs are metaken you, and they put you into they perfect you so that you can be dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In that, we find difference in the mitzvahs. We find that the mitzvahs are not all on the same level. In fact, there's 2 mitzvahs which stand out. 2 mitzvahs which stand out more than any other mitzvahs as far as their ability to be metaken and to be meichin the person to be able to be dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And those 2 mitzvahs are Talmud Torah, and that's what it means Talmud Torah keneged kulam, and that's what we're going to learn now today in the Ramchal. And the second one is Tefillah. Tefillah is actually an action of Dveikus and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That means all the mitzvahs, when you take a lulav, we don't see how the lekichas lulav is masakin us and prepares us to be dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't see it. That's all hoichazachen. The hoichazachen exist. They exist and it's there, but we can't see it. It's the toitzah of the mitzvah. But in tefillah, it's much more than that. The cheftza of tefillah is being dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Or as the Lashon of the Rambam and the Rishonim write, the tefillah is the amida, being oimed bedalad hamosav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You are oimed in dalad hamosav. You are oimed lefnei HaMelech. There's a wonderful maral, which I don't know where it is, in the Siddur which they brought out a beautiful Siddur of the maral. So at the beginning, he brings a few chapters from the maral on Inyonei Tefillah, and one of them he says it either him or the shlo. I can't remember which one it was, but they said like this: the iket tefillah Shmoneh Esrei. Now, Chassidim dance around, mechapt maluchim, the shokelt sich wie meshuggah. Yeah, and actually when it started, one of the biggest times that the Goin and the Misnagdim had on the Chassidim is, what the hell are they doing? What is this? They've never seen this before. Now, if you look at the Litvaks, obviously, just follow, sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. So you see the Litvaks also shockling away today. But if you look at the Sfadim, I'm talking about the Tamid Chacham, the Sfadim, they stand completely still. No movement whatsoever, with the hands over the chest, complete stationary. And I don't remember if it's the Maral or the Shlo, or maybe both of them, but one of them say the reason why is because when you want to be dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you have to make yourself vos mer, what more? I don't know how to say vos mer in English. You have to make yourself vos mer b'doim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why the derech of tefillah is to stand totally stationary, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is oneness, there's no movement, there's no change. Anything, whenever there's change or movement that depicts something which is not, how would I put it? It's not achdus. I don't know the way to put it. Achdus is depicted by what? By a constant, not change. In the same way, says the Goin in another place. I once saw the Goin says, that's why the tefillah is belachash. Why? Because in the posuk it says, it's a koil d'momo dako. So you doim it to the koil d'momo dako of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All these things are, we don't find in any other mitzvah. We don't find any other mitzvah that the Torah tells us how to do it. They should be b'doimet HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because all the other mitzvahs, you do the action, and it's doing things. The Toitzah is tikkun, but that's not the cheftza of the Maisa. But tefillah, the cheftza of the Maisa tefillah, is a cheftza of a Maisa of dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why there's a whole halacha, a perek in the Rambam, where the Rambam talks about how a man has to stand b'tefillah, because there's a way to be oimed b'dalat hamosav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's tefillah, and Torah is even a higher form of dveikus in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So again, here we're going to use, and this is, I think this is one of the classic. I always say that, people think that Musa, there's a cup for Musa, and there's a cup for Lomdus, and there's a cup for, let's call it Machshevet Israel, Machshove, and there's a cup for, let's call it Kabbalah. There's no such thing. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us Gemara, so he gave us an analytical mind, and he gave us the way to learn Torah. That same way is the way you learn everything. It doesn't change. It doesn't change. And this is a wonderful example of where you see without having the lomdus, the analytical mind of learning Torah, we wouldn't be able to understand this difference. And in lomdus, it's said so beautifully. There's a cheftza of dveikus, where the maisa mitzvah is a maisa of dveikus b'metzias. It's a cheftza of dveikus. That is tefillah, with all the halachas of tefillah, and we'll see now Torah. All the rest, the maisa is a maisa mitzvah. And admittedly, the Mekubalim will have kavonas, but that's only to create an outcome. The outcome of the mitzvah will be, it's metakin the person and making him to be dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's a preparation, all the mitzvahs, it's a preparation to enable you to be dovuk. But tefillah and Torah is something different. It's being dovuk here, in this world. The Maisa mitzvah is a Maisa of Dveikus and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's when you see Talmud Torah Keneged Kulon, is not because it's a more important tzivui. No, the tzivuim, they're all Tariag mitzvahs, there's no difference. But it's because the toitzor, the outcome which all these mitzvahs are coming together to do, if you're talking about the outcome of dveikus, their Torah stands alone. It stands alone and has no power. There's nothing like it. This is one of the most deepest understandings of what is Talmud Torah. So obviously, the first thing we see is Talmud Torah is not just an education to teach you in order to do mitzvahs. It's not a chetimsa to do mitzvahs. The Meiset of Talmud Torah is something else. Zemashuel, it's something else. Now let's read the first person, if not the only person, who writes it so eloquently, this idea, is the Ramchal. And that's in page 123. Oh, this has all been just a Hagdoma for the Ramchal. Hine, Talmud Torah, you have it? Hu inyan mukhrach. It's something which is obviously completely necessary. That means Torah, the most simplest way of understanding it is, and that's true also, it gives us the ability to make mitzvahs. If we wouldn't have the blueprint, if we wouldn't have the instruction booklet, we wouldn't be able to keep the mitzvahs. Kim lo yeda mahu mitzvah sheyasa eich yaseh omnom. Zulas kolzeh. Besides just giving us information, enabling us to carry out the mitzvahs, besides that, yesh betalmud tachlis godel l'shleimu shel ha'adam. The learning itself has an enormous tachlis for the tikkun ha'adam. We know what the tikkun means. The tikkun means the ability for man, the ultimate goal of the ability to be dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to be able to be zeicha in the ultimate toivo, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. I've already mentioned this biramiza in the fourth parak. Now I'm going to go into detail to explain to you the miyuchad, the unbelievable maila which is found in Talmud Torah more than anything else. Now listen to where he writes it. Listen to the words and let's be medayak the words. Here you see the Ramchal in his glory. Every word, every single word has to be translated, mamish like the Rishonim. Bichlal hashpois hanishpois mimenu yizborach letzorech b'yosef. Now again, hashpois is, what the translation of hashpois is this. A person does a mitzvah. Every mitzvah creates shefa. The only way it's all a moshel, because we have no way to, we have no other way to access and to any way comprehend it. Shefa is, let's call it the oir of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mashpia of himself on us. Mashpia means literally you, and what's that shefa? You're masaking yourself. Let me, what's cha? What happens? Let's give it let's give it an analogy. There's to be able to receive the oir of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I have to be matakin myself, and every tikkun, every single tikkun I do to myself elevates me and memela enables me to be zeicha, to sit under the chef of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That means the mitzvah and the schar, it's not like you did something good, so I'm going to give you a present. You are elevating, the shefa exists. The oil of HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists. We are not on the level to be able to receive it. We are farther away. We are rochik from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Every mitzvah brings us nearer because it is masakin us, and we can go closer and closer, and every step closer we are able to get more of his oil. So the shefa comes as a result of the mitzvah. The shefa is the oir of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The mitzvah enables me to literally, let's say, take that step ahead or to move closer and therefore to be zeich to the shefa. Shefa, the ability to receive shefa, is always a toitzah of the tikkun of the Maaseh mitzvah. That's the analogy is a person who, he takes medicine, and with every single pill he takes, he can go to the beach longer. That's the analogy. So every mitzvah you do, you can bathe in the oir of HaKadosh Baruch Hu more. The ability to receive the shefa is a direct consequence of the tikkun of the mitzvah. Now look at the language by Torah. Bichlal ha'ashpois hanishpois mimenu yizborach letzorach b'yosef. There is a certain oir of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yesh hashpo achas elyoina mikol hashpois. There's one form of light, one form of oir of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, one form of shefa of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is far beyond anything of its power in this world. That means HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it gives us the ability to bathe in his oil. But there is one special ultraviolet light. There's a special oil, a special shefa, which has nothing can be compared to it. Shinyona hu hayoyse yoko. U'ma'ula mikol ma she'efshe shimotzi b'nimtzoim. That means it's the purest form of spirituality which can reside on a human being. It's the purest form of elokus, of ruchnius, which is elokus, which is shefa, which can exist in this world. The purest form. V'hainu, says the Ramchal, shu tachlis ma she'efshe shimotze b'nimtzois. Now look at these words. Me'ein hametzius ho'amiti shelo yizborach. Listen to these words. It's as if God said like this. Listen to what he's saying. The shefa always, the Ramchal calls it, the Ramchal gives an analogy for it. It's like the rays of the sun. The sun, kavyochel, is elokus. We cannot in any way we can't bathe in elokus, but we get the rays of the sun. It's the analogy of the Ramchal himself and of the Ramak, who was even before he was slightly older than the Arizal. So we're talking now 600 years ago. The Ramak already gave the analogy of the sun and the rays of the sun. But the sun can't exist in this world. Elokus can't exist in the world of Choyme. But there's one form of elokus, something which could almost be considered godliness itself, which can exist in this world. That means everything else, all other forms of shefa are nothing more than a ray which comes from the sun. But Kaviyochel, there's a form of the sun itself which can enter into our world. Listen to the words of the Ramchal. There's shu tachlis ma she'efshe shimotze b'nimtzois. It is the spitz. How would you say? What's the tachlis? Translated, Jeff, in English? It's the ultimate. The ultimate purity which can exist amongst the nivroim, which is me'ein hametzius ho'amiti shelo yizborach. It's a me'en. It's some form of, it's not the ray. I don't know how we can really describe this. It's as if the sun sends down some sort of lower form of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends some form of elokus to this world. Meina mitas maloso yizborach. V'hu. What is this thing? What is this thing? What's this shefa which is so much above everything else that it's almost considered a form of elokus, as much as elokus can exist in this world? What is this? V'hu ma shemechalek ha'odoi nizborach shemoi michvoidoi v'yikore el abruov. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I will give of myself to you. Not that you'll be able to bathe in the rays, in my rays. It's not the rays of the sun, but I'm giving you part of me. This is a unique shefa, which could be almost considered a form of elokus, va'omnam. However, kosha habayra yizborach shemo yesashbo azois. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took this ashpo and he connected it. Kosha, not that it's an outcome of something, it's connected. Kosha hashpo, zugebunden, mir sagt in Yiddish. Hat es gebunden. He tied it together. Kosha habeire yizborach shmo yesashpo azois beinyan hanivro. He bound it together with a physical creation. That means there's something physical in this world which is totally interconnected. It's not one is an outcome of the other. It means it is all part of together. V'kosha inyan hazeh. Again, kosha b'yizborach shemo yesashpo azois b'inyan hanivro mimenu yizborach b'tak lezeh v'hu haTorah. Now, this paragraph is a mind-boggling paragraph. That means, that's why I gave it the whole Akdama. Shefa normally is an outcome of a mitzvah. That means, okay, I've got shefa, you're not in the madrega to be zeichatit. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a mitzvah. If you do this mitzvah, there's an outcome. The outcome of this is your zeichet to shefa. Here it works the other way completely. Completely different. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted in this world. He needed in this world. He needed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created in this world. There has to be a form of elokus. There has to be. The best way to describe it would be the Lashon of the Bach, which I think we've mentioned a number of times, the Bach in Orach Chaim, where the Bach says like this. He says that Al shleibichu b'Torah tchilo. Al shleibichu b'Torah tchilo, he says, because they didn't make the bracha tchilo. Therefore, remember, Uncle Harry didn't like the Bach. It was a bit extreme. So we're going to just say the part which is negeh fast. But what does the Bach say? What does it mean? Al shleibichu b'Torah tchilo. Says the Bach like this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted a place b'tachtoinim. He wanted a diro b'tachtoinim. He didn't want to create a world which exists without him. A world which only can get to a situation that it can bathe in the glory of the rays of the Lord. No. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted there should be in this world. He wanted the diro b'tachtoinim, that there should be a form of existence of elokus lamato. And for that, he was makasha this with the Torah. This is the shefa. That means this shefa is something which needs to exist in the world. The world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, cannot exist without elokus. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a dira b'tachtoinim. The way in which it manifests itself in this world, the way in HaKadosh Baruch Hu put it in this world, it has to take a physical form. Because if it's not physical form, it's not in this world. This is a physical world. So how does this elokus kaviyochel? It has to be zugebunden into some physical form. The Lashon kosher means because really elokus cannot take physical form. So the way that we're going to explain, or the analogy for Elokus coming into a physical form will be that he was kosher it in a physical form. It's kilu, he tied it in a physical form. What's that? That's Torah. Torah is not just a mitzvah through which you're zoicha to be metakin yourself so that you can be dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Do you know what Torah is? Torah is the manifestation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Cholak michvoidoi lireov. He gave Kavayochel a physical form, or physical way in which to hold a physical kli, to be able, Kavayochel, to hold some form of Elokus. And what's that? That's Torah. So when you talk about Elokus in this world, it's only Torah. So when we talk about Torah, it's something completely different. It's not just a tzivui. It's a form of Elokus that exists in this world. It's, now between me and you, that's the Gemara. The Gemara says that every word in the Torah is Shemoisov shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shemoisov shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Yud-Kei Vov-Kei. It's the only, when you talk about HaKadosh Baruch Hu taking some sort of form or anything, the only physical form which we can relate to Elokus is Yud Kei Vov Kei. So when you're talking about that the Torah is Shemoisov shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what are we saying? It's the closest we can get to Kavyochel, him being there. So now listen to this. So now there's only two ways in the world that we can do an action, which the actual action itself is an action of Dveikus and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Two ways. One way is tefillah. When you stand in Dalad HaMosaf, At Kedei Kach Reb Chaim Volozhin says, why do we do Oiseh Sholem B'Mreimov? Why do you go back 3 steps? Says Reb Chaim Volozhin, because you got to come back down to this world. But here, listen to what I'm telling you now. Tefillah means that we can have some form of hispashtus agashmias. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the ability to disconnect from our physical form and elevate ourselves till we can be dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That means tefillah is an action of dveikus, which is through you disconnecting with your physical form and kavayochel being able to be dovuk lemalo with your shechina. The Beis Yosef brings from the Maggid. Chaim Volozhin brings it. The Beis Yosef brings from the Maggid an eitzah for a person to be mechaven betfilo. What's the eitzah? He should, in his mind's eye, he should see the oisius of Yud-Kei, that is of Yud-Kei Vov-Kei, or the oisius that he is reading. Vayoima or Moidim Anachnu Mem Vov Dalad Yud. He should see, he should picture the oisius and imagine. Listen to the Beis Yosef. We're talking about the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef in the name of the Maggid, and imagine himself flying up high on those oisius. I think it's a wonderful way to understand what is tefillah. It's elevating oneself above his physical body, his pashtus hagashmias, and rising up, leaving your body here and rising up above your body. That's one ma'aseh dveikus. But you know what the Torah is? Laboisai. Do you know what limud Torah is? Leaving your body down here and connecting with your body and your speech and your mind to divrei Torah. That is dveikus in a physical form. But there is no bigger form of dveikus in Elokus. He says, you know, JB, Rabbi Yoshe Soloveitchik. So he says always, he didn't like Hasidim. He was a brisker and he didn't like Hasidim. And he said that he didn't call it Hasidim because he was you know, talking to liberal Jews in YU, so he couldn't call it, you know, Hasidim. So he called it the mystics. And he says the mystics try to bring man up above. They try to elevate man above his human position and bring him an out-of-body experience lemalo. That is almost tefillah. Said JB, that's not what Reb Chaim taught me. Chaim taught us, the Zayda taught us, you bring God down here. And that's through the sweat and the shouting and the screaming and the arguing and the human exhaustion created by limud Torah. And that these two things are really tefillah and limud Torah. And the mokoi for it is this Ramchal. Torah is the way in which, the form in which Elokus, or the only form of Elokus which can exist in this world, but it exists in the Divrei Torah. It exists in the words of Torah, in the Shemoisav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the pshat in the Gemara, Shemoisav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what it is, Shemoisav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Torah is not just a blueprint of creation. You know, people say, Torah is much more than some, law books. It's the blueprint of creation. It's absolute rubbish. Blueprint of creation. It's a form of godliness. The only form of godliness which can exist in this world. And that's what JB meant when he said over for Reb Chaim, we're bringing God down here. And God says, I'm willing to connect to you on a physical level. Through what? Divrei Torah. That's the unbelievable mila of Torah. It's not just a bit more or a bit less. It's, as they say in Ivrit, mashu acher. It's something completely different. It's literally a form of Elokus. And I've never found it written more eloquently and more clearly than in this Ramchal here. That's what the Ramchal say. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted the diru b'tachtoim. Now, let's go back to the Bach. Says the Bach, that's if we learn Torah with the intent to connect to Him. That means the Torah is a form of connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it was given for that purpose. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants a diro b'tachtonim so that we can connect to Him. Says the Bach, the Poisek. What's the pshat in the Gemara when the Gemara says, Al shalei bichu b'Torah tchilo? It says they weren't learning Torah to connect. They were learning Torah to get knowledge. Says the Bach, mitzvah they got. But now listen to these words. They were megarish HaKadosh Baruch Hu me'olamenu. They literally threw him out. Because his only form in which he can exist in this world is in Divrei Torah. But listen to this. The Divrei Torah is not just what's written. It's the way we connect to what's written. That means you can have a Hebrew Bible sitting in the Oxford University. But that Hebrew Bible, even though it's Divrei Torah, that's not the Mokim, which is the Diro B'tachtonim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's the same Tanakh and the same Sefer which lies in Yad Binyamin, which is used and which is torn and which is roughed, and the edges are roughed And that's the diro lebetachtonim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If all we would have left would be the Tanakh in the Oxford University, HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have nowhere to exist in this world. We, through our learning and our intention to connect, we give the Teichen to the Divrei Torah. We literally create the Diro Petachtoinim. We create the Elokus which exists in this world. It's a most phenomenal idea. It's literally breathtaking. It's a breathtaking idea. And I think the Zustel to Yosef Ber Soloveitchik is wonderful. Tefillah is when we elevate ourselves and reach up on high. We leave our body and we go up on high. But learning Torah is taking our body and connecting. It's the most gashmias dike dveikus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, it's the most highest. It's the most all-encompassing. That means no other form of dveikus encompasses my human body. Nothing encompasses my human body. Any other form which you can have the monk or even the tzaddik who's doing meditation, and through years of meditation he manages to completely disconnect his body till he can lie on this bed of nails and not feel anything because his body is left here and he's up there. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's not perfect. Okay, that's maybe the koich of tefillah, a form of meditation, elevation, or as Reb Chaim Volozhin writes, hispashtus hagashmius. But there's a much, 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 much more perfect. That's Torah. It's when you schwitz. It's when you schwitz and you need a shower after you finish your shir. It's when you schwitz. It's when you get red in the face. It's when the sweat pours from the brows. It's when every part of your body is involved in the learning of Torah. Then and only then is the dveikus all-encompassing and takes the whole person milamato, and it brings HaKadosh Baruch Hu down here. And that's Torah. And all that's written in these words. That's all this right. That's what he writes here. That's the Divrei Torah. V'inyan zeh, let's carry on till the end of the chapter. V'inyan zeh, mishtalim b'shtei b'chines. There's two ways in which to connect to the elokus which lies within the Torah. It means, how do I connect to it? Do I hold the Sefer Torah? Do I dance with the Sefer Torah? Do I kiss the Sefer Torah? How do I connect to the Shemois of Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which are there in the Torah? Says the Ramchal, Ve'inyan ze mishtalim b'shtei b'chines. There's two ways to access the shleimus of the Torah. Higoyin in the Lashon of the Ramchal means basic logic. That means not with iyun, not with in-depth thought. It means without thinking at all, that's nothing. He who comes and babbles and babbles and babbles and babbles and babbles, l'shem shemayim, and reads mamash bekavuna gedoyle, the whole of Negoim, bekavuna gedoyle, mit trop, mit the milel, all of it. Nothing. There has to be at least the form of connection of man to God. In Limud Torah works through Higoyin, through and the intellectually grasping the oimek of Kavonas HaTorah. So there's a basic, let's call it a basic understanding. That's called Higoyin. Ubahaskola, that means the in-depth, the iyun, the misboinen, the lehaven dovo mitoch dovo. That means the levels of intellectual gymnastics which are used. The more there's iyun, the deeper the connection. The less there's iyun, the less of a connection. וזה מה שביארנו שם. All this בעצם I've explained to you before in 2 words. כי הנה חיבר האודין, ברוך הוא כלל מילויס ומאמורים. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put together words and מאמורים, sayings, שהם כלל 5 חומשי תורה. ואחריהם במדרגה נביאים וכסובים. All these kisvei kodesh, kisvei kodesh, kisvei kodesh. V'kosha behem hashpoah zois. And he tied this hashpoah, which is almost where Kodesh Baruch Hu is cholak mikvoidoi. This hashpoah, which is me'en mitziuso yizborach. He was kosher it in these words. Be'oifen, that means, I don't know how you translate be'oifen in English. Be'oifen means, das meint, that means, shekeshiyidubru hadiburim oheim, when he will say these words. But saying doesn't mean just the words. He said you have to have with at least a basic understanding. Timoshech hashpo hazois lemedaber oisam. He will connect to the godliness, the elokus, the kvoidoi, which lies within the Torah through those words. Ubitnai, on one condition. Each person with the limit of his own understanding. That means, if the person is a professor in university, and when it comes to mathematics, he can sit over a mathematical problem for months and months. And when it comes to Limud Torah, he only has time for half an hour, the 20-minute daf today there is. A 20-minute daf. He only has time for that. Now, for somebody who's not so intelligent, that could be considered higoyin. That could be considered a basic form of understanding. For him, it's higonisht. That means each person, lefi mashahu, God gave you intellectual powers. According to your intellect, that's the form of dveikus, the form of connection that you have to connect to Divrei Torah. In the same way that I'm going to explain to you. That's the havona of dova, lehevin dova mitoich dova. Haskola means the deeper understanding, that which lies underneath. He who digs in deeper is megala more ve'elokus. That means there are revadim. There's levels of the elokus. There's a basic and a deeper and a deeper. The deeper you dig, the higher you get. Isn't that beautiful? The deeper you dig, the higher you get. The more connection you get to up on high. וכן באסכולה מה שנכלל בדיבורים מהם לפי דרכיהם אמיתיים, תימשך ההשפעה הזויס למשכילויזם. I want to just carry on. ואומנם, מדרגויס יש בהשפעה הזויס. Don't think that everyone who learns is going to connect to the same elokus. Somebody will, there's millions of different levels of touching, let's call it touching God. ונסחלקו המדרגס האלה בחלקי הגויים והאסכולה, it's לפי יועמק העיון. וכפי מה שרוס החוכמה עליונה היוס הנויס, the way הקדוש ברוך הוא saw fit, שבחלק אחד מן הגויים, with one form of עיון, תימוש המדרגה אחס מן השפור, ובחלק האחר מדרגה אחרס, וכן באסכולה. אך אין לך חלק מתלמוד תורה שלא תימשך במדרגה אחס ממדרגת ההשפעה הרמזויס, אם ישמרו בו התנאים המצטרכים. That means somebody who learns Torah seriously, on any level, it has to be with a basic havona l'fim is madrega. Everyone will touch God. The question is, to what extent are they touching elokus? But everyone's touching it. And that's the Talmud Torah keneged kulam. Nothing else enables the physical ability to be dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. Only Torah. Shkoyach Raboisai. This is the most beautiful perek of the Ramchal, and it just gets better and better and better the whole time. It's just unbelievable. It's just, and then it goes on to Tefillah, and it's like it's poetry. And the most beautiful thing is he says it all. All we have to do is just take seriously what he writes. He says it all. Shkoyach Raboisai. A gute Nacht to all of you. And Mitzvah Hashem, what can I help? I just